The words fell from Ellie Williams' lips like stones dropped in still water. She stood at the edge of Dutch van der Berg's property, her frame hollowed by hunger, her voice barely above a whisper. The request hung between them in the failing light of dusk. Dutch's hands stilled on the leather bridle he'd been mending. His weathered face, creased by years of sun and wind, registered something deeper than surprise. Pain flickered across his features. The woman before him swayed on. Her feet, her dress, once blue, had faded to the color of storm clouds. Tears in the fabric revealed skin marked by brambles and exhaustion. She couldn't have been more than 23, but her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen the world's cruelest. Offerings. Dutch set down the bridle with deliberate care. The leather dropped against the fence post with a soft thud. He studied her face, noting the intelligence behind the desperation, the way she held herself despite everything. "Ma'am." His voice carried the rough edges of a man who spent more time talking to horses than people. "That ain't how things are." "Gonna be." Ellie's body tensed. She'd prepared for many responses, but not rejection, not kindness. Her bare feet shifted in the dust, ready to run despite her body's protests. "I got food," Dutch continued, his tone gentler now. "Got shelter. You don't need to offer nothing in return." The words struck her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, confusion replacing the hollow certainty she'd carried to his door. In her experience, men always wanted something. Always. Took what they could get. "I don't understand." Her voice cracked on the words. Dutch approached slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. His boots crunched against the dry earth. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the evening stillness. "You're hungry," he said. "I got beef stew on the stove. Biscuits, too." Ellie's stomach betrayed her with a violent growl. She pressed her hands against her middle, as if she could silence the sound. The smell of cooking food drifted from the cabin behind Dutch, carried on the evening breeze. It made her knees weak. Why? The question escaped before she could stop. Dutch paused. Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of old pain. He glanced toward the horizon where the sun painted the sky in shades of copper and gold. When he looked back at her, his expression had hardened into resolve, because it's the right thing to do. The simplicity of his answer undid something in Ellie's chest. She'd been running for 3 weeks, surviving on berries and stream water. Her friend Tess hadn't made it past the first week. The memory of Tess's still form beside the creek sent a shiver through her despite the warm evening air. "They'll come looking for me," she whispered. The words carried a weight that made Dutch's jaw tighten. "Anyone who helps me, they don't usually live to regret it." Dutch's hand moved instinctively to his hip where no gun hung. He'd given up wearing iron 2 years ago, part of his attempt to leave the past buried. But old habits died hard, and the gesture revealed more than he intended. "Who's they?" Ellie's gaze darted to the tree line, then back to his face. "The Morrisons. They got papers that say I belong to them. Don't matter what the law says about freedom." The name meant nothing to Dutch, but the fear in her voice told him everything he needed to know. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of soldiers who'd watched too many friends fall. The look of someone who'd learned that safety was an illusion. "You're on my land now," he said quietly. "My rules." He turned toward the cabin, expecting her to follow. After a moment's hesitation, she did. Her bare feet made no sound on the packed earth, but Dutch could sense her behind him, coiled tight as a spring. The cabin was small but well kept. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The smell of beef stew filled the air, rich and warming. Dutch ladled the mixture into a wooden bowl, his movements economical and sure. Ellie remained by the door, ready to bolt. She watched him with the intensity of someone cataloging every detail, every potential threat. Her eyes swept the room, noting the rifle mounted above the fireplace, the single chair by the table, the absence of any feminine touches. Dutch set the bowl on the table, along with a chunk of bread. Steam rose from the stew, carrying the scent of carrots and onions. He stepped back, giving her space. "Eat." She approached the table like she was walking into a trap. Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon, but once the first bite hit her tongue, desperation took over. She ate with the focused intensity of someone who'd forgotten what full felt like. Dutch watched from across the room, his back against the wall. He'd seen hungry people before, but there was something about the way she ate that spoke of deeper deprivation. Not just physical hunger, but the kind that came from having every scrap of dignity stripped away. When she finished, she set the spoon down carefully. Her eyes met his across the small space. "Thank you." The words came out rough, unused to gratitude. Dutch nodded. "There's a blanket in the barn. Clean straw. You can rest there tonight." Ellie's body sagged with relief, but her mind remained sharp. "What do you want from me tomorrow?" "Help with the horses if you're able. I'll pay fair wages." The concept of payment seemed foreign to her. She studied his face, searching for the trap she knew had to be there. Men didn't help women like her without expecting something in return. But Dutch's expression remained steady, almost gentle. "I don't know much about horses," she admitted. "Most folks don't. You learn by doing." He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a worn shirt and pair of trousers. "These might fit. Water barrels by the well if you want to wash up." Ellie accepted the clothes with trembling hands. The fabric was soft, mended in places but clean. She held them against her chest like armor. "I won't be any trouble," she said. "Didn't figure you would be." She moved toward the door, then paused. "What's your name?" "Dutch. Dutch van der Berg." "I'm Ellie Williams." The exchange felt formal, important. Like the first stone laid in a foundation, neither of them fully understood yet. Dutch watched her disappear into the gathering darkness, her slight form swallowed by shadows. The barn door creaked open, then closed. He remained at his window long after the sound settled, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, for the first time in months, Dutch felt something other than the weight of his past mistakes. He felt useful again, needed. In the barn, Ellie wrapped herself in the blanket and listened to the night sounds. Crickets chirped in the grass. An owl called from somewhere in the distance. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found somewhere safe to rest. Even if it was only for one night. Dawn broke over the ranch with the color of old copper. Ellie woke to sunlight streaming through the barn's gaps, her body stiff from sleeping on straw. The borrowed clothes hung loose on her frame, but they were clean. They smelled of soap and honest work. Dutch was already at the corral when she emerged. He moved around the horses with quiet confidence, checking hooves and running weathered hands along their flanks. The animals trusted him. She could see it in the way they leaned into his touch. Morning. His voice carried no judgment about her late rising. Ellie nodded, unsure of the protocol. Did he expect her to disappear now? Return to the road and its dangers? The question burned in her throat, but she couldn't voice it. Dutch gestured toward the well. "Water's cold but clean. Breakfast is on the table." She pumped water into the wooden bucket, the metal handle smooth from countless hands. Her reflection wavered in the surface. The face looking back seemed foreign, less hollow than yesterday, but still haunted. The cabin held the warm smell of coffee and bacon. A plate waited on the table, portions generous enough to feed 2 people. Ellie ate slowly this time, savoring each bite. Through the window, she watched Dutch work with a chestnut mare, his movements patient and sure. When she finished, she found him in the barn, sorting through leather tack. Bridles hung from wooden pegs, their metal bits gleaming in the filtered light. The smell of oiled leather filled the air. "Can you read?" Dutch asked without looking up. The question caught her off guard. "Yes, right? Some." He handed her a worn ledger, its pages yellowed with age. "Keep track of the horses, what they eat when they're exercised. Can you handle that?" Ellie accepted the book, its weight solid. In her hands, "Why?" Dutch's eyes met hers. "Because you're sharp. Waste to not use it." The simple acknowledgement of her intelligence hit harder than any kindness. She'd been taught to hide her learning, to make herself small and invisible. But Dutch spoke of it as something valuable. Days settled into rhythm. Ellie recorded feed amounts and exercise schedules in her careful script. She learned the horses' names and temperaments. Thunder, the black stallion who bit anyone but Dutch. Rosie, the gentle mare who nuzzled her pockets looking for sugar cubes. Dutch taught her to curry their coats, to check for stones in their hooves. Her hands, soft from weeks of hiding, grew calloused and strong. The work felt good, purposeful, but she watched him too. The way he flinched at sudden sounds. How he never fully relaxed, even in sleep. She'd seen him through the cabin window, sitting by the fire with his head in his hands. Whatever haunted him ran deep. On the fourth day, she found the medal. Dutch had sent her to fetch blankets from the cabins. Back room, the drawer stuck, warped by years of desert heat. When she pulled harder, it came free, spilling its contents onto the floor. The brass caught the light. Union Army. The ribbon was faded but intact. She read the inscription, Corporal Arthur Morgan. For valor in battle. The name wasn't Dutch. The face in her mind shifted, rearranged itself around this new truth. She replaced the medal carefully, closed the drawer, and said nothing. That evening, Dutch cooked rabbit stew over the fire. The flames painted his face in shifting shadows. Ellie sat across from him, the weight of knowledge heavy between them. "You never asked where I came from," she said finally. Dutch stirred the pot with deliberate care. "Figured you'd tell me when you were ready. The Morrison place, about 50 miles east." The words came easier than expected. "They kept us working after the war ended. Sod we owed them for room and board." Dutch's spoon stilled. "Slavery by another name. My friend Tess and I, we decided to leave. Had papers saying we were free, but the Morrisons, they had guns." Ellie's voice dropped. "Tess didn't make it past the first week." The fire crackled between them. Dutch's jaw worked, but he said nothing. "I can read because I used to listen at the schoolroom door," Ellie continued. "When the Morrison children had their lessons. Their teacher, Miss Sarah, she caught me once. Instead of telling, she started leaving books where I could find them. Good woman. She married a man from back east. Left 2 years ago." Ellie poked at the coals with a stick. "Said I was smart enough for college, if things were different." Dutch ladled stew into bowls, his movements careful and measured. "Things can change, can they?" The question held years of disappointment. Or do we just keep running from what we are? Something flickered in Dutch's eyes, recognition maybe. Or guilt. He handed her the bowl without meeting her gaze. The next morning brought riders on the horizon. Ellie spotted them first, her body going rigid with fear. Dutch followed her gaze, his hand moving instinctively to his hip. "Get in the barn," he said quietly. "Stay out of sight." She obeyed, pressing herself against the wall where she could see through the gaps between boards. 3 men approached, their clothes dusty from travel. The leader wore a badge that caught the morning sun. "Sheriff Bell," Dutch called out, his voice carefully neutral. The man with the badge was lean and sharp-faced, with eyes that missed. "Nothing. Dutch, heard you might have hired help." "Might have. What's it to you?" "Looking for a runaway. Young woman, about 25, goes by the name Ellie." Sheriff Bell's gaze swept the ranch. "Morrison family's offering a reward." Ellie's breath caught. Through the barn slats, she could see Dutch's back, straight and unyielding. "Haven't seen anyone matching that description," Dutch said. "Mind if we look around?" "I do mind." "This is private property." The sheriff's smile held no warmth. "Course it is. Just being neighborly." He wheeled his horse around. "You see anything, you let me know. Good citizens help each other out." The riders disappeared into the distance, leaving dust and tension in their wake. Dutch waited until they were specks on the horizon before approaching the barn. "They're gone," he said simply. Ellie emerged, her face pale. "They'll be back. Maybe. You lied for me." Dutch's eyes met hers, steady and sure. "I told the truth." "Haven't seen anyone matching their description." "What do you mean?" "Woman. They're looking for is a runaway. Someone who belongs to other people." His voice carried quiet conviction. "That ain't you. You're a free woman working for honest wages." The distinction mattered more than she could say. Not property, not a thing to be owned. A person with value and choice. That night, Ellie lay in her straw bed, listening to the wind whistle through the barn's gaps. Sleep wouldn't come. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound might herald pursuit. She thought about the medal in Dutch's drawer. About the name Arthur Morgan and what it might mean. About the way he'd looked when he lied to the sheriff. Not guilty, but determined. Whatever his secrets, he'd chosen to protect her. The knowledge settled in her chest, warm and unfamiliar. For the first time in years, someone had stood between her and danger, asked for nothing in return. The next morning, she found Dutch at the corral, working with Thunder. The stallion tossed his head, fighting the bit. Dutch's patience never wavered. "Teach me to ride," Ellie said. Dutch glanced at her, gauging her resolve. "Riding's dangerous. Takes time to learn proper." "I've got time," he nodded slowly. "We'll start with Rosie. She's gentle." They worked through the morning, Dutch's hands guiding hers as she learned to hold the reins. His touch was careful, respectful. When she finally sat in the saddle alone, the ground seemed impossibly far away. "Trust the horse," Dutch said. "She knows what she's doing." Ellie loosened her grip on the reins. Rosie began to walk, her gait smooth and steady. The rhythm was hypnotic, soothing. For a moment, Ellie felt something she'd almost forgotten. Freedom. That evening, she sat at the table with the ledger, updating the day's entries. Her handwriting had grown more confident, the letters flowing easier across the page. Dutch watched from his chair by the fire, mending a bridle with practiced hands. "Dutch," she spoke without looking up from the book. "Yeah? Thank you. For everything." He tied off the leather cord, testing its strength. "You've earned your keep. That's not what I mean." Dutch set down the bridle. In the firelight, his face looked younger, less weathered by whatever ghosts he carried. "I know what you mean," he said quietly. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the cabin's windows. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, pregnant with rain. Change was coming. Ellie could feel it in the air, in the way Dutch's shoulders tensed when he thought she wasn't looking. But for now, there was warmth, there was work that mattered. There was a man who'd chosen to see her as human when the world insisted otherwise. It was enough. For now it was enough. 2 weeks had passed since Sheriff Bell's visit. The threat hung over the ranch like storm clouds that refused to break. Ellie moved through her daily tasks with heightened awareness, every distant sound analyzed for danger. Dutch had grown quieter too. He watched the horizon more frequently, his hand checking for the gun that wasn't there. The easy rhythm they'd built together carried an undercurrent of tension. On Tuesday morning, thunder rolled across the sky without rain. Ellie was mucking Thunder's stall when hoofbeats approached from the east. Multiple riders this time. Her blood turned to ice water. "Ellie." Dutch's voice was steady, but she heard the warning beneath. She set down the pitchfork and moved toward the barn's back wall. Through gaps in the weathered wood, she could see 5 men approaching. Sheriff Bell led them, his badge glinting in the overcast light. "Dutch van der Berg," Bell called out, his voice carrying the authority of law and the weight of threat. Dutch emerged from the cabin, his movements deliberate and calm. He'd changed into a clean shirt, as if preparing for something formal, something final. "Sheriff, you're back. Told you I might be." Bell's horse shifted beneath him, sensing its rider's tension. "Got reports of a woman working your ranch. Folks in town are talking. People always talk. This talking's got teeth." Bell gestured to the men behind him. "Morrison family's offering $50 for their property. That's more than most folks see in a year." Ellie's hands clenched into fists. Property. The word hit her like a physical blow. After weeks of being treated as a person, the reminder of how the world saw her cut deep. "Like I told you before," Dutch said. "Haven't seen anyone matching your description." "See, that's interesting." Bell dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with deliberate thuds. "Because I got it on good authority that you're harboring a runaway." "Your authority's wrong." Bell's smile was sharp as broken glass. "We'll see about that." The sheriff moved toward the barn. Dutch stepped into his path, the movement subtle but unmistakable. Both men stood perfectly still, measuring each other. "This is private property," Dutch said quietly. "And I'm the law." Bell's hand rested on his gun butt. "Step aside." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Ellie held her breath, pressing herself against the barn wall. Through the gaps, she could see Dutch's face, carved from stone and resolve. "You got a warrant?" Dutch asked. "Don't need one for a runaway." "You do for a citizen." The distinction hung between them, heavy with meaning. Bell's eyes narrowed, studying Dutch's face for weakness. He found none. "You're walking a dangerous line, van der Berg." "Only line I'm walking is the one between right and wrong." Bell circled Dutch slowly, a predator testing defenses. "Funny thing about lines, easy to cross without noticing." "I notice everything. Do you?" Bell's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I notice things too. Like how a man can live quiet and peaceful for years, then suddenly grow bold. Makes a person wonder what changed." Dutch's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "Makes a person wonder what secrets might be hiding in that quiet life." Bell's gaze swept the ranch buildings. What names a man might be running from, the threat was clear. Ellie's heart hammered against her ribs. Whatever secrets Dutch carried, Bell knew them, or suspected them. "I'll make this simple," Bell continued. "You produce the girl. I forget about my curiosity. You don't. And I start asking questions in town. About your past. About who you really are." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, Dutch spoke. "Got a woman working for me. Hired hand. Name's Ellie Williams. She's free legal and under my protection. Bring her out. Let me see for myself." Dutch's head turned slightly toward the barn. Not enough to give away her position, but enough to let her know the choice was hers. Ellie stepped away from the wall. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced them to carry her forward. The barn door opened with a creak that sounded loud as thunder. She emerged into the gray morning light, her chin raised despite the fear coursing through her veins. The men on horseback stared at her with the calculating eyes of buyers at auction. "There she is," Bell said, satisfaction coloring his voice. "The Morrison girl." "The name's Ellie Williams," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I work for Mr. van der Berg." "Work?" Bell's laugh was harsh. "That what you call it?" Heat flooded Ellie's cheeks, but she held his gaze. "Honest work for honest wages. Honest." Bell dismounted again, approaching her with slow, deliberate steps. "Show me your papers." Ellie's hand went to her shirt pocket. The folded document was worn from handling, but still legible. She'd carried it every day since leaving the Morrison place. Belle examined the paper with exaggerated care. Says here you're free. But the Morrisons, they got papers too. Papers that say you owe them for room and board. For taking care of you all these years. I worked for everything I got. Did you now? Belle's eyes were cold as winter sky. Well, that's for the courts to decide. In the meantime, you're coming with me. No. The word came from Dutch flat and final. Belle's hand moved to his gun. You're interfering with the law. I'm protecting a free woman from kidnappers. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Kidnapping was a serious charge, one that could bring federal marshals and uncomfortable questions. Belle's face darkened with anger. You're making a mistake, Vanderberg. I've made plenty of mistakes. This isn't one of them. The standoff stretched toward a breaking point. Ellie could feel violence gathering in the air, thick and choking. Then the sound of distant thunder rolled across the land, and rain began to fall. The drops started slowly, pattering against the dry earth. Within minutes, they became a steady downpour. The mounted men shifted uncomfortably, their horses dancing beneath them. This isn't over, Belle said, raising his voice above the rain. No, Dutch agreed. It isn't. The sheriff swung back into his saddle, water streaming from his hat brim. Next time I come back, I'll have federal papers. See how bold you feel. Then, the riders disappeared into the gray curtain of rain, leaving only the sound of water on wood and the distant rumble of thunder. Dutch and Ellie stood in the downpour, neither moving to seek shelter. You should have let me go, Ellie said finally. Why? Because now they know about you. Whatever you're hiding, they'll use it. Dutch turned to face her, rain streaming down his weathered face. What makes you think I'm hiding something? Ellie studied his eyes, seeing her own secrets reflected. There, because we all are. They moved toward the cabin, their footsteps squelching in the mud. Inside, Dutch built up the fire while Ellie changed into dry clothes. The storm raged outside, lashing the windows with wind and water. When she returned to the main room, Dutch was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. The weight of whatever he carried seemed heavier now, pressed down by the day's confrontation. His name was Arthur Morgan, Ellie said quietly. Dutch's head came up sharply. What? The medal in your drawer. It belongs to someone named Arthur Morgan. The silence that followed was deeper than the storm outside. Dutch's face went through a series of changes, settling finally into something that might have been relief. You went through my things. The drawer stuck. Contents spilled out. She sat across from him, her hands folded on the table. I wasn't snooping, but you looked. I looked. Dutch rose and moved to the window, staring out at the storm. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the rain-soaked landscape. Arthur Morgan was a soldier, he said finally. Corporal in the Union Army, good man, brave man, was. He died in a field hospital outside Gettysburg. Fever took him. Dutch's voice was flat, emotionless. I was there when it happened. So you took his name. I took his medal, his papers, his whole life. Dutch turned from the window, his face etched with old pain, because I was too much of a coward to face my own. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Ellie felt the weight of his trust, the significance of sharing something so dangerous. What's your real name? Dutch Vanderberg, that much is true. He returned to the table, sitting heavily. But I wasn't no corporal. I was a private. A deserter. You ran. I ran. The words came. Outbroken, full of shame. Left my unit before a battle. Told myself I was being smart, staying alive. But men died because I wasn't there. Good men. Ellie reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. So we're both running from something. Seems like. And now they know. Bell and his men, they'll use it against you. Dutch's hand closed around hers, calloused and warm. Let them try. Outside, the storm began to ease. The rain softened to a gentle pattering, and the wind died down to a whisper. But inside the cabin, something had shifted. The air felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. "What do we do now?" Ellie asked. Dutch looked at her across the small table, this woman who'd stumbled into his life, carrying her own burden of secrets. "We keep going. We work the ranch. We live our lives. And when they come back, we'll be ready." The promise settled between them, solid as the foundation stones of the cabin. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Two broken people who'd found something worth protecting in each other. The fire crackled in the hearth, pushing back the darkness. Outside, the storm moved on, leaving the air clean and filled with the promise of new growth. A month had passed since the storm. The truth between Dutch and Ellie had settled into something solid, unspoken, but understood. They worked the ranch, with a rhythm born of trust, their movements complementing each other without need for words. Ellie had changed. The hollow-eyed woman who'd begged for food was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself with quiet confidence. Her hands, once soft with desperation, now bore the calluses of honest work. She handled the horses with growing skill, her voice steady when she spoke to them. Dutch watched her transformation with something close to pride. She'd learned to read the sky for weather, to judge a horse's mood by the set of its ears. The ledger entries had evolved from simple records to detailed observations about each animal's health and temperament. "Thunder's favoring his left front leg," she said one morning, looking up from the corral. Dutch moved to examine the stallion. His hands probed the leg with practiced care, finding the tender spot near the hoof. "Stone bruise, good catch." The praise came naturally now. Ellie had earned it through weeks of careful attention, of learning to see what others missed. She nodded, already moving to prepare the poultice Dutch would need. That afternoon, riders appeared on the horizon. Not Sheriff Bell this time, but strangers. Two men on horseback, their movements purposeful and unhurried. Dutch's body went tense, his hand moving toward his hip out of habit. "Company," he said quietly. Ellie emerged from the barn, her face calm but alert. She'd learned to read the signs, to feel danger in the air before it announced itself. These men rode differently than Bell's posse, professional, controlled. The riders approached the ranch house with deliberate care. The older man was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and eyes that missed nothing. His companion was younger, lean and quick, with the same watchful intensity. "Dutch Vanderberg?" The older man called out. "That's right. Name's Joel Miller. This is my brother Tommy. We're looking for someone." Dutch's stance shifted subtly, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. Lot of people looking for someone these days. Young woman. Goes by Ellie Williams. About 23, dark hair. Smart as a whip. Joel's voice carried no threat, only tired determination. "We're not here to cause trouble." Ellie stepped forward, her chin raised. "I'm Ellie Williams." The effect on Joel was immediate. His weathered face softened, years of worry falling away. "Ellie, my God girl, you're alive. Should I be dead? The way you disappeared, we thought ... Joel dismounted slowly, his movements careful and non-threatening. "We thought the worst." Tommy remained mounted, his eyes scanning the ranch for threats. "We've been looking for you for weeks. Following rumors, false leads. Why?" Ellie's voice was steady, but Dutch could see the tension in her shoulders. Joel stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the changes in her face. "Because you're my daughter." The words hit Ellie like a physical blow. She stepped back, her hand finding the corral fence for support. "My father's dead. Your father's standing right here. My father left me when I was 7 years old. Sighed I'd be safer without him." The pain in her voice was raw, unhealed. "Said he'd come back when things got better. I tried. Joel's voice cracked. Spent 10 years in and out of prison. Every time I got close to finding you, something went wrong. The law, bad luck, my own stupid choices. Dutch watched the reunion with growing understanding. The family resemblance was clear now that he knew what to look for. Same stubborn jaw, same intelligent eyes. What changed? Ellie asked. War ended. Slavery ended. Figured it was time to make good on old promises. Joel's gaze swept the ranch, taking in the well-maintained buildings, the healthy horses. Looks like you found yourself a good situation. I found myself a home. The distinction was important. Dutch felt something loosen in his chest at her words. She'd chosen this place, chosen him. Not from desperation now, but from something deeper. That's good, Joel said. That's real good. But we need to talk about what's coming. What's coming? Tommy spoke up for the first time. Morrison family hired professionals, real bounty hunters, not local law. They're maybe 2 days behind us. The news hit Dutch like cold water. How many? 6 men, led by a man named David Campbell. Joel's expression darkened. He's got a reputation for bringing people back, one way or another. Dutch's blood turned to ice. Campbell, the name dragged up memories he'd spent years burying. A scarred face twisted with anger. Orders shouted across a battlefield. Men dying, while their leader proved himself a coward. You know him, Ellie said, reading his expression. We've met. When? Dutch was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with ghosts. The war. He was my commanding officer. The admission hung heavy in the air. Tommy's hand moved closer to his gun, sensing the shift in tension. Campbell's not just after me, Dutch continued. He's after Arthur Morgan, the deserter who got half his men killed. But Arthur Morgan's dead, Ellie said. Campbell doesn't know that. Far as he's concerned, I'm the coward who ran when my unit me most. Dutch's voice was flat, emotionless. He's been looking for me since the war ended. Joel studied Dutch with new interest. So this isn't just about bringing back a runaway. This is about settling old scores. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. Campbell hadn't just taken the Morrison contract for money. He'd taken it because it led him to the man. He'd spent years hunting. We need to go, Tommy said. All of us, right now. No, Dutch's voice was firm. Running won't solve anything. Campbell will just keep coming. Then what do you suggest? Dutch looked at Ellie, seeing his own determination reflected in her eyes. We make a stand. Here, on ground we know. That's suicide, Joel protested. Campbell's got 6 men. Professional killers. He's got 6 men who don't know the land. Who don't know us. Dutch's gaze swept the ranch, cataloging defensible positions. We've got advantages they don't. We? Joel's eyebrows rose. You rode all this way to find your daughter. You planning to abandon her now? Joel's jaw tightened. Course not. Then we work together, all of us. Dutch turned to Ellie. It's your choice. We can try to run, or we can fight. Ellie was quiet for a long moment, her gaze moving between the men. Dutch could see her weighing options, calculating risks. When she spoke, her voice was steady and sure. I'm done running. The decision settled over them like dust after a storm. Joel nodded slowly, acceptance replacing protest. Tommy checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. Campbell will come at dawn, Dutch said. They always do. Think it gives them an advantage. What's the plan? Dutch smiled grimly. We turned their advantage into a trap. They spent the remainder of the day preparing. Joel and Tommy proved to be skilled tacticians, their years of surviving on the margins evident in their suggestions. Ellie moved between them, asking questions, learning. As evening approached, Dutch found himself watching her with something approaching awe. The desperate woman who'd offered herself for food was gone completely. In her place stood someone who'd found her strength, her voice, her place in the world. "You don't have to do this," he told her as they checked the horses one final time. "Yes, I do." She met his eyes without flinching. "This is my home, my choice. Could be the last choice you make, then I'll make it count." The sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. By morning, everything would change. Dutch sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle with methodical care. The weapon felt strange in his hands after years of avoiding violence. But some fights couldn't be walked away from. Ellie sat across from him, her own rifle resting across her knees. Joel had taught her to shoot years ago, before circumstances tore them apart. The skill had returned quickly, muscle memory awakening under pressure. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Dutch said quietly, "I want you to know something." "What?" "You saved me. That first night, when you asked for help. You gave me a chance to be something other than a coward." Ellie's hand found his across the space between them. "You were never a coward. You were just afraid." "Same thing." "No, a coward would have let Sheriff Bell take me. Would have given up when things got hard." Her fingers tightened around his. "You stood up. You chose to fight." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and change. Tomorrow would bring Campbell and his men. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning Dutch had spent years avoiding. But tonight, there was warmth. There was purpose. There was a woman who'd found her strength and a man who'd found his courage. It was enough to fight for. It was enough to die. The fire crackled between them, pushing back the darkness. In the distance, thunder rolled across the land, promising storms to come. Dawn broke gray and cold over the ranch. The storm clouds from the night before had passed, leaving the air sharp and thin. Dutch stood at the cabin window, watching the horizon for movement. His rifle leaned against the wall, loaded and ready. Ellie checked the horses one final time, her movements calm and deliberate. The animals sensed the tension, their ears pricked. Forward, nostrils flaring. She spoke to them in low, soothing tones, her voice steady despite the fear coiled in her chest. Joel and Tommy had positioned themselves in the barn, their rifles trained on the main approach. They'd argued about including Ellie in the defense, but she'd ended the discussion with quiet determination. "This is my fight too." The words still echoed in Dutch's mind. She'd found her voice, her strength. Whatever happened today, she wouldn't face it as a victim. Movement on the horizon caught his attention. 6 riders, approaching in a loose formation. Campbell's men, just as predicted. Dutch's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the lead rider. David Campbell sat his horse. With military precision, his scarred face set in lines of grim satisfaction. Even at this distance, Dutch could see the cruel intelligence in his eyes. The man who'd haunted his nightmares for years was finally within reach. "They're here," Dutch called out. Ellie moved to her position behind the water trough, her rifle ready. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled. All the fear and uncertainty of the past months had crystallized into this moment. Campbell's voice carried across the morning air, sharp and commanding. "Arthur Morgan, I know you're in there." Dutch stepped onto the porch, his rifle cradled in his arms. The wooden boards creaked under his weight, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. "Name's Dutch van der Berk," he called back. Campbell's laugh was harsh and mirthless. "Still playing games, are we? Still hiding behind false names and dead men's medals?" The words hit their target. Dutch's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Course you don't." Campbell spurred his horse forward, his men following. "Just like you didn't know what you were doing when you ran from that battlefield. When you left your brothers to die." The accusation hung in the air between them, heavy with old pain. Dutch felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on his shoulders, the voices of dead men whispering in his ears. "I was following orders." Dutch said quietly. You were following your own yellow streak. Campbell's horse stamped impatiently, sensing its rider's anger. But that's not why I'm here today. No, today I'm here for the girl, the Morrison property. Campbell's gaze swept the ranch, searching for movement. Hand her over, and we'll discuss your past transgressions later. Dutch's grip tightened on his rifle. There's no property here, just free people on free land. Free, Campbell spat the word. You always did have a soft spot for lost causes. From her position behind the trough, Ellie watched the exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about her anymore. Campbell had come for both of them, to settle old scores and collect new bounties. I'm not going anywhere, she called. Out, her voice carrying across the yard. Campbell's attention shifted to her, his eyes narrowing. That's not your choice to make, girl. My name is Ellie Williams, and every choice I make is mine. The defiance in her voice seemed to amuse Campbell. Spirited, I like that. Makes breaking them more interesting. Dutch stepped forward, his movement drawing Campbell's attention back to him. You want her, you go through me. Gladly. The standoff stretched taut between them. Campbell's men spread out, their weapons ready. In the barn, Joel and Tommy adjusted their positions, fingers light on triggers. You know what I think, Arthur? Campbell's voice was conversational, almost friendly. I think you're tired of running. Tired of hiding. Part of you wants this fight. Dutch considered the words, feeling their truth. He was tired. Tired of carrying guilt. Tired of living under false names. Tired of looking over his shoulder. Maybe I am. Good, because I've got a proposition for you. Campbell's smile was cold and calculating. Single combat, you and me, winner takes all. And if I refuse? Then my men start shooting, and everyone dies. Campbell's gaze found Ellie again. Starting with the girl, the threat crystallized the moment. Dutch felt the weight of choice pressing down on him. He could fight Campbell's whole crew, risk everyone's lives in a battle with uncertain outcome. Or he could face his past directly, one man against another. Dutch, don't, Ellie said, reading his thoughts. It's the only way. No, it's not. We can fight them together. Dutch turned to meet her eyes, seeing the fear there. Not fear for herself, but fear for him. The realization hit him with unexpected force. She cared about him. Not just as protection or kindness, but as something deeper. This is my choice, he said gently. Your choice affects all of us. Then I choose to end this, here and now. Dutch set his rifle aside and walked toward Campbell, his hands empty, but his purpose clear. Each step felt like shedding weight, like leaving behind years of guilt and shame. Campbell dismounted to meet him, his own weapon set aside. The two men faced each other in the dusty yard, ghosts of their shared past rising between them. You really think this will redeem you? Campbell asked. I think it will finish what we started. What we started was your cowardice getting good men killed. Dutch absorbed the words, feeling their familiar sting. But underneath the pain, something else stirred. Not acceptance, but understanding. You're right, he said quietly. I was a coward. I ran when I should have stayed. Campbell's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the admission. But I'm not that man anymore. Dutch's voice grew stronger. That woman over there, she taught me something about courage. About standing up when it matters. Pretty words. Let's see if they mean anything. The fight that followed was brief and brutal. Campbell had military training, but Dutch had years of ranch work in his muscles. They grappled in the dust, neither giving ground, both men pouring years of anger into the struggle. When it ended, Campbell lay still in the dirt, his breathing shallow but steady. Dutch stood over him, his face grim but resolute. It's over, he said. Campbell's men had watched the fight with professional interest. With their leader defeated, they seemed uncertain. The promise of payment warred with the reality of facing Joel and Tommy's rifles. "Your boss lost," Dutch called out. "You got no quarrel with us." The men exchanged glances. After a moment, the one who seemed to be second in command nodded slowly. "We'll take Campbell and go, but this isn't finished." "Yes, it is." They loaded Campbell onto his horse and rode away, leaving dust and silence in their wake. Dutch stood in the yard, watching them disappear, feeling something lift from his shoulders. Ellie ran to him, her rifle forgotten. She stopped just short of touching him, her eyes searching his face for injury. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. You could have been killed." "But I wasn't." Dutch's hand found hers, calloused fingers intertwining. "We're safe now." Joel and Tommy emerged from the barn, their weapons lowered but ready. The older man studied Dutch with new respect. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Joel said. "Maybe both." "Campbell will be back," Tommy warned. "Men like him don't forget. Let him come. Next time he won't find the same man." The truth of the statement settled over them. Dutch had faced his past and found it wanting. He was no longer the deserter hiding behind false names. He was a man who'd chosen to stand and fight. "What now?" Ellie asked. Dutch looked at her, at Joel and Tommy, at the ranch that had become home. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but no longer defined by running. "Now we live," he said simply. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning chill. In the distance, storm clouds gathered again, but they seemed less threatening now. Just weather, not omens. Dutch had found his courage. Ellie had found her strength. And together, they'd found something worth fighting for. The hardest battles were behind them. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as family, as partners, as people who'd chosen each other when the world offered no other choice. The ranch waited, patient and enduring. There was work to be done, horses to tend, a life to build. And for the first time in years, Dutch looked forward to tomorrow. The dust had settled. Campbell's men were gone, their leader defeated but alive. Dutch stood in the yard, feeling the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning chill and the ghosts that had haunted him. Ellie moved close to him, her hand finding his arm. The touch was gentle, reassuring. They had survived. More than that, they had chosen each other when the world demanded they stand alone. "What happens now?" she asked. Dutch looked at the ranch, at the horses grazing peacefully in the corral, at the cabin that had become home. "Now we build something better." Joel and Tommy approached, their weapons finally lowered. The older man studied Dutch with newfound respect. The fight with Campbell had revealed something essential about the man who'd protected his daughter. "You fought well," Joel said simply. "Fought smart," Tommy added. "Campbell won't be back anytime soon. And when he does, we'll be ready." The promise hung between them, solid as the foundation stones of the ranch. They were no longer running from their pasts. They were building toward their futures. Over the following days, Joel and Tommy helped repair the damage from the confrontation. They worked alongside Dutch and Ellie, their skilled hands making quick work of broken fence posts and scattered equipment. The ranch began to feel whole again, but more than that, it began to feel like family. Joel watched his daughter with wonder and pride. The desperate woman he'd feared finding was gone, replaced by someone strong and capable. She moved with confidence, spoke with authority, carried herself with the dignity of someone who'd found her worth. "You did good work here," he told Dutch. One evening as they sat by the fire, "She did the work herself. I just gave her the space to do it. That's more than most would have done." Dutch nodded, understanding the weight of the compliment. In a world that saw Ellie as property, he'd seen her as a person. In a time that demanded she be small, he'd helped her grow large. Tommy proved to be a skilled horseman, his gentle touch with the animals earning their trust quickly. He worked especially well with Thunder, the stallion who'd bitten everyone but Dutch. Under Tommy's patient guidance, the horse began to accept others. "Animals know good people," Tommy said, watching Thunder nuzzle Ellie's hand. "They don't lie about character." The observation carried deeper meaning. All of them had been tested by life, marked by hardship and loss. But they'd chosen to remain decent, to help rather than harm. The horses recognized that truth. 3 weeks after the confrontation, federal marshals arrived at the ranch. Dutch's heart clenched as he watched them approach, but their purpose proved benign. They carried warrants for Campbell's arrest, charging him with kidnapping and extortion. "Man's been operating outside the law for months," the lead marshal explained, using bounty hunting as cover for robbery and worse. The news vindicated Dutch's decision to fight. Campbell hadn't just been pursuing a runaway slave. He'd been building a criminal enterprise, using legal loopholes to justify illegal actions. "What about the Morrison claims?" Ellie asked. "Dismissed. Federal court ruled their post-war contracts invalid. You're free, Miss Williams, officially and completely." The words carried weight beyond their legal meaning. Ellie was no longer running from anything. She was simply living, choosing her own path with each passing day. As summer deepened, the ranch transformed. Word spread through the underground networks that connected displaced people across the territory. Dutch and Ellie's place became a haven for those seeking honest work and fair treatment. Mary, a young woman fleeing an abusive marriage, found shelter and purpose tending the vegetable garden. Samuel, an elderly man with nowhere else to go, proved gifted at training young horses. Each new arrival strengthened the community they were building. Joel decided to stay permanently, his wandering days behind him. He built a small cabin on the eastern edge of the property, close enough to help, but far enough to give Ellie space to live her own life. "I lost too many years with her," he told Dutch. "Don't intend to lose any more." Tommy remained as well, his restless energy finding outlet in expanding the ranch's operations. He talked of buying additional land, of building a proper settlement where people could live without fear. "Place could be something special," he said, gesturing toward the horizon. "Not just a ranch, but a real community." The vision took shape. Slowly, organically. They painted a new sign for the front gate, "New Beginnings Ranch, all welcome." The words drew people from across the territory, some staying briefly, others putting down roots. Ellie managed the growing operation with quiet efficiency. Her ledger had expanded into multiple books, tracking not just horses but crops, supplies, and the needs of their extended family. She'd found her calling in creating order from chaos, in making sure everyone had what they needed to thrive. Dutch worked alongside her, his role evolving from owner to partner. He taught newcomers the skills they needed, mediated disputes, and made the hard decisions that leadership required. But he never made those decisions alone. Ellie's counsel had become essential to everything he did. One evening, as autumn painted the sky in shades of copper and gold, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The ranch bustled with activity below them. Children played in the yard while their parents finished the day's work. The sound of laughter drifted on the evening breeze. "You know what you gave me that day?" Ellie said softly. "When I asked for food." Dutch turned to look at her, seeing the woman she'd become, strong, confident, valued. "What's that?" "You gave me back my name, my choice, myself." The words hit deeper than any praise. He'd helped her find her way back to who she was meant to be. But in the process she'd done the same for him. "You did the same for me," he said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their community settle into evening routines. The ranch had become something neither had envisioned when they first met. Not just a place to live, but a place to belong. Joel emerged from his cabin, walking slowly toward the main house. At 65, he moved with the careful dignity of someone who'd lived hard but learned wisdom. He joined them on the porch, his presence completing their family circle. "Good day?" he asked. "Good day," Ellie confirmed. "Samuel got the new colt to take a bridle. Mary's garden is producing more than we can eat. Tommy's talking about building a schoolhouse. Sounds like progress, sounds like home." The word carried weight for all of them. Home wasn't just a place but a feeling. Safety, purpose, belonging. They'd all found it here, in this unlikely gathering of broken people who'd chosen to heal together. As the stars appeared overhead, Dutch felt a peace he'd never known before. The guilt that had driven him for years was gone, replaced by purpose and hope. He was no longer Arthur Morgan the deserter or Dutch Vander Berk the haunted rancher. He was simply Dutch, partner to Ellie, friend to Joel and Tommy, protector of anyone who needed shelter. The ranch settled into nighttime quiet. Lights flickered in windows across the property, each one representing a life-given new hope. Children were tucked into beds, dreams filled with possibilities their parents had never dared imagine. In the distance, a coyote called to its pack. The sound was lonely but not threatening. Just part of the natural world, finding its place. In the greater harmony, Dutch and Ellie remained on the porch, her hand in his, watching the stars emerge. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new people seeking refuge, new opportunities to build something lasting. But tonight, there was peace. There was family. There was love that had grown from shared struggle and mutual respect. The woman who'd once begged for food now managed a thriving community. The man who'd once hidden from his past now faced each day with courage. Together, they'd created something beautiful from the broken pieces of their lives. The ranch spread before them, a testament to the power of choosing hope over fear, kindness over cruelty, together over alone. It was more than they'd dared dream when they first met in the failing light of that desperate evening. It was home. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.